Well, hello to my friends and students. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make it for this last class, but next best thing, YouTube. So I told you guys that we were going to work on the mission statement. But before we do, I've got to do review. And the reason we do review, I've told you before, is because we forget stuff. Like, we forget stuff all the time. We have to be reminded. That's why, you watch a movie a second time or a third time and you get more out of it, or you read a book a second or a third time and you get more out of it. And so I'm going to quickly review a few things, and then we're going to talk about your mission statement. Your mission statement, not your to-do list, but your to-be list. Who you're going to be in life. And you have that power, that fuerte, to decide. And so quickly, remember paradigms. Remember paradigms. Paradigms are so important. How we see the world, how we see society, how we view political issues, family, love, friends. Every single human being perceives and then forms opinions about things. Sometimes those opinions or worldviews or paradigms are correct, and oftentimes they are a little bit misguided, and sometimes they are severely misguided. And we want to be people that see things as they are, not merely as they're perceived. And we talked about when we were little and we would look at the end of the road and it would look like there's water. It wasn't really water. It was just a combination of heat. And so we talked about paradigms, how we all have them, and especially when you're younger, our views are formed by our family, by our parents. Doesn't matter if you're rich, doesn't matter if you're poor, doesn't matter if you're somewhere in between. Our views are shaped by our families. Our views are shaped by the culture we live in. We talked about North Korea and Somalia. We talked about Espanola, and we talked about New York City, and we talked about Newport Beach, and we talked about all these different places where people could come from. But basically, we have society. We have what our parents say, role models in our family, but we also get on our phones and we go on TikTok or Instagram or Snapchat and we perceive stuff. And a lot of the stuff we perceive makes us feel a certain way about ourselves. So we don't only have paradigms, views about the world, we have views about ourselves. We have paradigms about our own worth, our own value. That's just really normal. But to be aware of the fact that sometimes our viewpoints are correct and sometimes they're not correct, just to have that awareness puts you in front of most adults. Just to have that awareness that your own perception about the way life should be, your own perception about who you are, could be flawed. And we want to have a correct perception about who we are. We want to see things as they are. And that's really, we use some of the Covey book, that's habit number one, being proactive. This idea that we are this mighty force of flipping nature, and that we have power to make decisions about how we think, make decisions about who we're going to be. We're that kind of thing. We're not some algae at the bottom of a pond. We're not the bird that's flying outside of your classroom or wherever. We actually are the kind of thing, the kind of agent. We talked about Viktor Frankl. And even in the worst conditions in Auschwitz, he decided that he still had control over certain things. And so do we. Remember, we don't live in North Korea where you can't go to college. It's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to climb out of your social setting in North Korea. That's not true in the United States. We do have choices. It's not always easy. So we talked about being proactive versus being reactive, and we all talked about how we don't respect people that are reactive. When somebody, it could be a parent, it could be a friend, when somebody is super explosive and reactive, we never think, I so admire their virtue of being reactive. Remember that? And I said to some of you after class, go into the hallway, and next time someone says something to you that you don't like, just chill for a minute and just count. Try to count to 10. And you could feel the power in us to react. But to have that Zen power to decide, no, I'm not going to be reactive. I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to decide what I'm going to do, how I'm going to respond to things. That's a power. Okay, so I'm going through this stuff really quickly. And then from this idea of having power, having choices, we could wake up earlier, we could drink more water, we could work out more, we could finish our homework. We have that kind of power. We might not like it or we might not do it, but we are the kind of agent that has that kind of power. And from that place, okay, you all nodded and said, yeah, I guess you're right. We do have choices, even though a lot of us don't feel that we do because of circumstances, personal circumstances in our lives. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, even in a concentration camp, decided I can choose my response to these Nazis that are torturing us or are so authoritarian. I have power. You have power. You have so much power. It's unbelievable. So you have to know that about yourself, because our paradigms, right? How we see the world sometimes is, I don't really have much power. I don't, this is just who I am. This is just the way. You hear that? That's a worldview, but it's a false worldview. You know it's false. It is false. Doesn't mean life is easy. It just means that we do have power. Okay. From there, we talked about chapter 2, and we talked about beginning with the end in mind. So this is in the Covey book. That's the second habit, right? Remember, habits are everything. Our habits shape us. They form us. Our habits are ultimately who we are. And Covey comes up with this idea of beginning with the end in mind. And this is the personal mission statement that you are all going to write. I know it's the last week of school. I know there are going to be a million other things to do, but each of you are going to write a personal mission statement. I'm telling you to do it, okay? And it doesn't need to be 20 pages long, but it is coming to an understanding of we plan things, and this idea that all things are created twice. So all of us do this. This weekend, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go wash my car, and then I have to do this, right? We plan things all the time in our mind, and then there's the action. That's how we live our lives, right? You're sitting in a classroom, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to go home at this time, and when I get home, I'm going to do this. That's the thought, and then there's the action. So all things are created twice. That's what we do as human beings. We think about an action, we deliberate, and then we decide to do it. So all things are created twice, and so is the life that we want to have, or not. So we could say, I'm opting out, dude. I'm not into it. I don't want to have a personal mission statement for my life. I'm just going to let stuff happen, and I'm just going to let it go, come and go as it goes. And that's one way to choose, right? It's a choice. So to my skeptics, and I know some of you, you just don't, you think this is lame, and that's fine. That's a choice, and you can just live your life. You can just let life happen to you. It's kind of the way a lot of adults end up living. And many times when they're 40 and 50 and 60 and 70, they look back thinking, how did I get here? But you've been informed. You've been put on notice. You have a choice to decide what are your values going to be. Okay, we talked about this. And I want you to go to habit 2, and Covey lists some values, virtues, ideas, generosity, education, determination, generosity, kindness, travel, education, right? These are all different values or priorities that we can decide are going to be important to us, and we write them into our life, not our to-do list, but who am I going to be list. And then we put things first, which is habit number 3. And so this is so basic, because when we think of a blueprint for any building, the building that you're in right now, there had to be a blueprint written for that building That's the first creation. And then there was the action, right? Yes, Paul, I agree. That's the way it works there. In a sport, if in sports, there's a game plan. A team has a game plan. It's the NBA finals right now. Sometimes, it depends on the sport, but there's a game plan. There's the plan, and then there's the game. And we can have a life plan. And that's really it. And there are 7 habits, but we're only covering the first 3, which are the foundational habits. Number 1, to be proactive or reactive. You have power. Number 2, okay, since I have power, what am I going to do? And again, the book has guidelines on how to write your mission statement. And Covey gets, it could be thought of as being a little bit morbid or dark, but he says, imagine going to a funeral, and you get there and all these people are there from your community, all these people, and you realize it's your own. And, what would the people say about you? And that's the project, is to imagine your life 3 years from now. Family members, friends, people from your work, people from your community. What they say about you is determined by how you decide to live your life. And it seems really simplistic. Some people could say, Paul, this just seems overly, it's overly simplistic. Life is more complicated than that. And life is more complicated than that. But I told you all that I picked up that book when I was 30 years old. Someone gave it to me. And I didn't like the title. I'm not into quick fixes at all, as you know. But I wrote a personal mission statement. And my life is exactly, it is virtually exactly what I wrote based on my dream. And I told you this. I wanted to give my life to helping others. That showed up. Education showed way up there. Writing showed way up there. Being the kind of dad that shows up for my kids, way up there. I just decided this is the guy I'm going to be. And here I am decades later because of a book. And because the principles in that book, and we talked about things outside of the book, are universal. We have power. All things are created twice. And now is your opportunity to go write your mission statement. Your mission statement changes over the months and over the years. But man, go out, go somewhere quiet, and dream up. What are you passionate about? Who do you want to be? Who do you look at in your life and say, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that adult. And write it in the reverse. We have the power. That is what I have. And one of the greatest honors of my year, and in many ways my life, is being able to step into yours, juniors and seniors. I believe in you guys so much. You're going to do great things and really be successful. But remember, you have to be proactive about it. It doesn't just happen. You have to go after it. So get after it and stay in touch. See ya.
The thing I would say is, when you grow up, you tend to get told that the world is the way it is, and your life is just to live your life inside the world, try not to bash into the walls too much, try to have a nice family life, have fun, save a little money. But life, that's a very limited life. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact, and that is everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it. You can influence it. You can build your own things that other people can use. And the minute that you understand that you can poke life and actually something will, if you push in, something will pop out the other side, that you can change it, you can mold it. That's maybe the most important thing, is to shake off this erroneous notion that life is there and you're just going to live in it, versus embrace it, change it, improve it, make your mark upon it. I think that's very important. And however you learn that, once you learn it, you'll want to change life and make it better, because it's kind of messed up in a lot of ways. Once you learn that, you'll never be the same again.